Stand up.
Hello, my friends. Thank you very much for joining me on today's episode of Stand Up. You are not going to be disappointed with my guest. It's Emily Feiner, the activist who was dragged, picked up, and carried out by New York State troopers from the Congressman Mike Lawler's town hall, my congressman, her congressman, on Sunday night. You've seen the photos of her being carried out. Well, I've got her here, and we had a wonderful conversation. It was great to get to know Emily Feiner a little bit more. I know of her, and yet I had not somehow, I don't think, met her at this point, even though we live in the same district and travel in many of the same circles. Very happy to have her joining me here and introduce her to you. That conversation starts at about 30 minutes in, if you want to skip ahead. But I've got your headlines, I've got a clip show for you, the best audio from yesterday, and I've got you. So let's do it. One of the top international stories, probably yesterday, is that shortly after midnight local time, India said it had conducted 9 strikes in Pakistan, reportedly killing at least 26 people in response to a recent militant attack on tourists in Indian Kashmir. India claimed that it had hit sites of terrorist infrastructure and said that its action was focused, measured, and non-escalatory. But Pakistan's response suggests that its analysis is dangerously different. The strikes constitute the largest such Indian attack on Pakistan in more than half a century and marked the worst confrontation between the two nuclear-armed powers since 2009. So the stakes are heightening there. It's a pretty scary situation. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail in the conflict. Let's move now to the Vatican, where Catholic cardinals from around the world have gathered to elect a new pope. Yay, new pope! I'm sure everything will be different and better for the Catholic Church. Be very interesting to see who they settle on. I mean, who God chooses, right? Doesn't God make the choice? Yesterday, for some reason, our tiny authoritarian tyrant king says that the U.S. will stop strikes on Houthis in Yemen. That is an interesting story. I'm wondering what's going on there. But Trump said the U.S. will end the bombings of Houthi militants in Yemen. A second U.S. Navy jet fell off or was lost at sea from the USS Truman aircraft carrier. What the hell is happening on the Truman? Another $60 million U.S. Navy jet has fallen off the U.S. aircraft carrier and has been lost at sea. And I blame Pete Hegseth. Israel heading for a full occupation of Gaza. And at least 3 of you responded yesterday to my commentary about this. I'm going to address that probably on tomorrow's show. I will either call you or play those voicemails that a couple of you sent me, read what you've written. I'd love to hear from you on that issue. Ukrainian drones attacked Moscow, temporarily halting flights ahead of a major military parade. And Germany has a new chancellor. His name is Friedrich Merz. The election took place a few weeks back, as you might remember, but Mr. Merz needed 2 rounds of voting to become chancellor after a surprising defeat in parliament hours earlier, threatened to hobble his new government. So all is not well necessarily in Germany, but they do have a new leader, and it'll be interesting to see if he is able to lead. And those are some of the international stories happening. At least those are the ones that I picked for you. Let's come home to our chaotic situation. Yesterday started with our tyrant king meeting with Canada's new prime minister. It was far less confrontational than his interactions with the country's previous leader, Justin Trudeau. Mark Carney reiterated yesterday there is no way the country will become part of the United States. Not ever, ever, ever. And I'll play some of those clips for you coming up. The Supreme Court yesterday announced it would allow Trump to implement his ban on transgender people serving in the military, which is a terrible idea and does no good and creates a tremendous amount of harm. The justices granted an emergency request from the Trump administration to lift a nationwide injunction blocking the policy while litigation continues. Just an inane policy that will do damage to the military. So many qualified people who identify as trans who are on active duty, doing great work every day. And now what? Just for no good reason at all other than politics and scare tactics and male insecurity, I'd argue. The U.S. trade deficit is getting bigger, not smaller. That's right. The trade deficit in goods and services soared to a record of $140 billion in March. Year to date, the deficit has increased 92% as companies and consumers rush to import goods before Trump's stupid sweeping global tariffs take hold on July 6th. Thought this was another interesting story. Yesterday, Senator Tom Tillis, Republican in North Carolina, said he will not support a guy named Ed Martin, very controversial attorney for the U.S. District of Columbia, to be the U.S. Attorney for U.S. District of Columbia, likely blocking the path to confirmation. He was the Stop the Steal, one of the Stop the Steal organizers. He closely aligned himself with January 6 defendants, and that was just a little too far for at least one Republican senator, which should sink his nomination. We'll see what happens next. They'll probably just nominate someone more extreme. He did meet with Enrique Tarrio, one of the leaders of the Proud Boys. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen next in Trump's America? The administration also has temporarily suspended an air quality monitoring program at national parks across the country. So that makes a tremendous amount of sense. You know, why do we need clean air at national parks? I think it's overrated. More than 150 former state and federal judges have signed a letter to the Attorney General Pam Bondi condemning the Trump administration's escalating battles with the judiciary and calling the recent arrest of a sitting state court judge in Milwaukee, Judge Hannah Duggan, an attempt to intimidate. Thought this was interesting. Columbia University and New York Presbyterian Hospital agreed to pay $750 million to hundreds of women who had been sexually abused by a doctor. A former gynecologist named Robert Haddon abused patients, including children, for 2 decades, starting in the early 1990s. Horrific story there, but a major settlement for the victims of his horrific crimes. Mattel, the maker of Barbie dolls, remember dollies? Oh, we're talking so much about them, said it would raise prices on U.S. toys because of Trump's 145% tariffs on imports from China. No surprise there. Newark's mayor led a pre-dawn protest outside an immigrant detention facility, which I thought was pretty cool. His name is Ross Baraka, arguing that it had begun operating without the rights permits. In Washington, D.C., ICE agents stormed D.C. restaurants and demanded to interrogate employees. That was a pretty big story yesterday out of D.C. If you're following that or you are having any similar stories in your town or city, please let me know. The raids came as Trump seeks to deliver on his campaign to arrest and deport undocumented immigrants. In March, the administration deported more than 230 men to El Salvador, where they're being incarcerated, of course, without due process. More controversial appointments to the Health and Human Services Department of the United States. The FDA chose a very controversial doctor named Vinay Prasad to lead their biologics and vaccines division. Biotech stocks fell after they named this guy, by the way, and he is an oncologist, and he is going to be the new vaccine chief. So that's pretty terrifying because of who that guy is. I followed a little bit of his work during the pandemic, and I guess he got it about half right, but the half he didn't get right is pretty disconcerting. But what do I know? I'm sure everything will be fine. He also promoted a guy who touted hydroxychloroquine to treat COVID to a major pandemic prevention role, a guy named Stephen Hatfill, who promoted the drug despite scant evidence of efficacy. He has now become a special advisor at Health and Human Services. At least he's a virologist. He served in Trump's first administration and promoted hydroxychloroquine to treat the virus in the early months of the pandemic when vaccines and treatments were not yet available. Well, he's got a new job too. So those two guys working in the federal government it's not great, I don't think. In other news, Weight Watchers has filed for bankruptcy protection to eliminate their debt burden. Did Ozempic and similar drugs put Weight Watchers out of business? I don't know. I'm just guessing. What the hell's going on there? It's one of the most effective weight loss programs in the market, and I'm not sure how great it was, but it was definitely more effective than others, is my understanding. And those are the headlines that I've gathered for you this morning, and there are always a lot more, and I want to hear from you. What should I be covering? What should I mention? standupwithpete@gmail.com. Cannot do it without your support. Now let's get to the clip show, the audio I brought you today. Well, I hate to play the president's voice. I know it's triggering and upsetting for people. I'm only going to play a few moments here, but this is from the Oval Office yesterday where you're sitting there with the Prime Minister of Canada and his counterparts sitting across the couch from Trump's. And Trump did not go hard on the whole 51st state. He didn't call him the governor yet, 51st state governor of Canada or any of that. They started off on a little bit different footing, but it didn't stop Trump. He was asked by a reporter about the annexing of Canada, and I'm just going to play the last few moments of what he said and get Mark Carney's response for you. Here it is.
I do feel it's much better for Canada, but we're not going to be discussing that unless somebody wants to discuss it. I think that there are tremendous benefits to the Canadian citizens, tremendously lower taxes, free military, which honestly we give you essentially anyway because we're protecting Canada if you ever had a problem. But I think it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together. And we have done that in the past. And part of that, as the president just said, is with respect to our own security. And my government is committed for a step change in our investment in Canadian security and our partnership. And I'll say this as well, that the president has revitalized international security, revitalized NATO, and us playing our full weight in NATO, and that will be part of it.
True. And they have, I must say, Canada is stepping up the military participation because Mark knew, they were low, and now they're stepping it up, and that's a very important thing. But never say never. Never say never.
All right, well, never is the answer, and that was a clear answer that Mark Carney gave him. Later on, Carney held his own press conference in D.C., took a question from a Canadian reporter. Here is about a minute of that.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Tonda McCharles, Toronto Star. I was watching your face through the meeting in the Oval Office, and I wondered what was going through your mind when the President talked about erasing the artificial border and how he criticized your predecessor and Madam Freeland.
Thank you for your question. I'm glad that you couldn't tell what was going through my mind as that was going through. With respect to the first point, the president has made known his wish about that issue for some time. I've been careful always to distinguish between wish and reality. I was clear there in the Oval Office, as I've been clear throughout on behalf of Canadians, that this is never going to happen. Canada is not for sale. It never will be for sale. Some things, as I said in the room, some things are never for sale. And he agreed with that. I distinguish between the two, and then with respect to the importance of reestablishing a constructive relationship for negotiations of a partnership, of an economic and security partnership, which is what we were here for. I look forward, not back, and I think we established a good basis today.
There you go. They established a good basis. I thought that was very interesting. Later on, there was a press conference. Trump, the vice president, Department of Homeland Security, and others convened for the first meeting of a World Cup task force. The 2026 World Cup is going to be co-hosted by United States, Canada, and Mexico. And so there was this conference yesterday where the president was there sitting next to J.D. Vance, and stupid J.D. Vance went viral again for saying this about fans and tourists who come to visit the U.S. for the World Cup.
And we'll have visitors probably from close to 100 countries. We want them to come. We want them to celebrate. We want them to watch the game. But when the time is up, they'll have to go home. Otherwise, they'll have to talk to Secretary Noem, who I'll turn it over to now.
Oh, man. Yeah, that did not go over well. Social media had a riot with that. When you can't stay, we might arrest you. But could definitely come to the U.S. But hey, it might be problematic for you. Well done, J.D. Vance, fucking idiot. And then Christy Noem, I won't play it for you, just did some bootlicking right there and said, "Oh, Mr. President, thank you for dreaming such a big dream." She's the worst. All of his cabinet secretaries are, including the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who was under question at a House hearing yesterday. Here's Congressman Mark Pocan giving him a very hard time, and Scott Bessent just having no idea how to handle this line of questioning about who pays tariffs. He tried, but it was pretty ugly. Here it is.
I think you were at a global investor conference in Beverly Hills yesterday. That's the cocktail party where you mentioned the crazy Ivan theory. And before that, you were at a JP Morgan Chase World Bank private investor summit. All those things are not Main Street, right? Main Street is an auto body repair, a specialty printer. So my concern is on the tariffs. Who pays tariffs, Mr. Secretary? No. Answer the questions I asked, please. I only have 5 minutes. Who pays tariffs?
Sorry? Well,
who pays tariffs?
Sorry,
Mr. Secretary, please.
Excuse me.
The question is very simply, who pays tariffs, Mr. Chairman? I'd like him to answer that question. He wants to answer other questions.
Well, Congressman, if the exporters, they dislike tariffs so much, why wouldn't they? If I think what you're trying to get me to say.
Did you remember the question? I'm not sure you did. Who pays tariffs?
It's a very complicated question.
Reclaiming my time. People pay tariffs, right? Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time. You clearly aren't going to answer. I'm not going to waste my time having you go, Mr. Secretary, reclaiming. Mr. Chairman, I asked reclaiming my time.
Tariffs.
Mr. Chairman. And I asked to reclaim my time. Did I not? No, I said reclaiming my time because he's clearly not answering it. So, yeah. So as a small business owner, and unfortunately I'd like that time back since you failed to recognize me for 30 seconds. So I just recently from one of my suppliers got the tariff surcharge on things. And in addition to the tariff surcharge, guess what else got raised? American-made walnut plaques. That has nothing to do with tariffs, but companies take advantage and do that. So right now, we are getting screwed right and left because of the indiscriminate use of tariffs. That's the reality for Main Street. And you go off to Beverly Hills for private investor conferences and talk about crazy Ivan theories. Answer that. What is the crazy Ivan theory of tariffs that you mentioned at the summit?
Well, first of all, sir, I've had meetings with more than 50 small lenders. So I want to clarify that. I would also say that in game theory, strategic uncertainty, of which you seem to like the name Crazy Ivan.
Well, it's your words, correct? Didn't you use Crazy Ivan at the
Well, you've used it 5 times. And
that's the question, Mr. Chairman.
I am saying the strategic uncertainty is part of negotiations. Should we say, here's what we'll accept. Please take this.
Okay, I've got your answer. Thank you. I'm going to reclaim my time again. So for a small business, we don't have that luxury, right? When the ports are empty in California and we can't get goods and people are stocking up for Christmas goods, Crazy Ivan is great for, please don't take this offense, really rich people like you. But for people like me, it's not, right? That's what makes small businesses fail. That's what makes people lose their jobs. That's what makes the stock market tank. So I'll ask one more time, who pays tariffs?
Sir, the history would show that it is a complicated mix of who pays the tariffs over various times.
So that's exactly the problem. If your answer, and you are a very educated person, you have a very impressive bio, cannot answer the question who pays tariffs because you won't answer that, and you say it's a complicated issue, it's not complicated. Consumers pay Trump's tariff tax. That's the reality. And I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman, but I do think next time if I ask to yield back, I would appreciate having my time yield back.
Sure. All right, there you go. That's a little bit of how it sounded. There's a whole bunch of hearings yesterday where cabinet secretaries are getting grilled, including Secretary of the VA, Doug Collins, and more. But I got to play another Scott Bessent clip. This is from a little friendlier questioner. This is on Fox News with Laura Ingraham. Listen to this stuttering, stammering, weird Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary.
the other thing, too, is this reporter behind me was quite snarky the other day when President Trump talked about the girl having two dolls. And he said, well, what? President didn't take the question, but he said, what would you tell that girl? And I said, I would tell that young girl that you will have a better life than your parents, that you and your family, thanks to President Trump, can now be confident again that you will have a better life than your parents, which working class Americans had abandoned that idea. Your family will own a home. You will be able to advance. You will have a good education. You will have economic freedom. That's what we are advancing.
Oh, I hope he's right. That would be amazing. I would love to be wrong and have the analysis of almost every economist be wrong as well. And yeah, I hope my daughters have a way better opportunities than we did. I'm sure it'll be great. It's going to be awesome. I'll let them know. And then I'll ration dollies to them. All right, here's a local news outlet. I don't even know where this is from, but I just thought I'd grab it because it's an update on the Real ID situation.
If you don't have a Real ID ahead of tomorrow's deadline, a little bit of good news for you.
The Department of Homeland Security says you can still fly with whatever ID you do have.
If it's not compliant, they may be diverted to a different line, have an extra step, but people will be allowed to fly. We will make sure that it is as seamless as possible and that travelers will get to stay on their intended itinerary. But we are telling people that this law will be enforced.
Okay, well, speaking of that terrible woman, that's Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. And yesterday she had to answer questions in front of a Homeland Security subcommittee from a bunch of Congress folks, including Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who gave her no break. She's the ranking member of the Committee on Appropriations for Homeland Security. And this is just about how that sounded.
It is also violating the fundamental right of individuals. Do you believe that the Constitution grants everyone in our country the right to due process, including non-citizens?
The administration has the authority to.
Ma'am, I'm looking for a yes or no question. Yes or no. Do you believe the Constitution? Yes, ma'am. Do you?
We have not conducted
claiming my time, Mr. Chairman. Time is yours. Okay, Secretary Noem, I'm just looking for a yes or no here. Do you believe the Constitution guarantees due process to everyone in America?
Due process is exactly what this Congress lays out.
Yes or no? Okay, ma'am, I'll take that as a no.
On due process
excuse me, I'm trying to ascertain your understanding of the law as it applies to your department, and you as its leader should be able to give us a yes or no answer because judge after judge has ruled that the law is not being followed. Do you believe that the U.S. government has the authority to deport American citizens?
No, and we are not deporting U.S. citizens.
I'm so happy to hear that you do not believe that the law gives you that authority because the federal government has no authority under U.S. laws to deport any American citizen. And as I know, everyone viewing this hearing today knows that several American citizens have been deported to date. Secretary Noem, that was not a question. Secretary Noem, that oath that we both swore before taking office was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, not the president, not a political party, the Constitution. And that's what we're going to keep doing here at the Appropriations Committee. Thank you. I yield back.
All right. Well done, Congresswoman. And now let's head to Pete Buttigieg, who was on MSNBC's The Briefing with Jen Psaki last night. I thought this was pretty good. He's always good.
Free speech issues. Look, we may or may not disagree with an op-ed that a student writes or a protest, everything said at a protest that they attended. But what I know is that in this country, you should not be stuffed into a van or picked up off the street or thrown into detention because of an op-ed you wrote or a protest you showed up, ever. That's just a fundamental thing. And by the way, the libertarians and the conservatives should be in lockstep with progressives on this, that is just wrong.
A great point, and here's a little bit more from Buttigieg's conversation last night on the premiere of Jen Psaki's new nightly 9 p.m. slot. Rachel Maddow does Mondays, apparently, and Jen Psaki does the rest of the week, I think.
So I guess, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think this is really correct. Look, we have got to make sure that our opposition and everything that we're against, and obviously there is a lot to be passionately against right now, but it has to travel with a clearer picture of what we are for. Because there are a lot of voters who, for whatever reason, and Democrats might be shocked by this, but for whatever reason, did not find any of the things they've seen so far about Donald Trump to be disqualifying. And what that means is there's something else that, it doesn't mean they necessarily loved him, but they need to see something more. This is not a question of accommodating things that we don't agree with or watering down or changing our values. It is a question of making very clear to everybody how your everyday life is different if we're in charge compared to if they're in charge. What your life could be like if wages went up the way that we propose that they be raised. What we would do with the money if we successfully stopped the tax cuts for the wealthy that are at the core of Donald Trump's economic agenda. What we think could happen in a country where we had paid family leave and some of the unfinished business of fixing our health care system. It's not just a matter of preserving the Affordable Care Act, as important as that is. It's going the next step to make sure everybody can get and afford health care. All of these things that need to happen, that needs to be as clear a picture as our response to the authoritarian tendencies of this administration. Because the truth is, proto-authoritarian governments don't just come out of nowhere. We would not be in this situation if the government, the economy, and the politics of our country were healthy. They've been unhealthy for a long time. I think everybody knows that. And if my party seems like it's calling for a return to the status quo from before, that will be both substantively wrong and politically it will fail.
All right. People to judge, putting it out there for everybody. Got to be for something, not just against something. And that's it. That's all I've got for you, except for some laughs.
I'm your host, Stephen Colbert. Quick question before we get started tonight. Anyone here from out of the country? All right, well, you live here now because you're never going to want to fly again. Because for the past week, there have been thousands of delays at Newark Airport right across the river, including hundreds of cancellations just this morning. We now know the culprit was a 90-second blackout during which air traffic controllers temporarily lost radar and communications with the aircraft under their control, unable to see, hear, or talk to them. Oh, no. See, here. Those are three fairly important things. That means for 90 seconds, our air traffic control system was... There's one. There's one right there. There's another. Okay. You circle. You little blue ones, you land. Land. This blackout led to a cascade of problems throughout the week. And after a long investigation, we now know that a fried piece of copper wire sparked the blackout. Unlike the other blackouts at Newark, which were caused by the Grand Coconut Margarita at Terminal A, Chili's 2. You know their slogan, Chili's 2. Flight delay, we'll put rum in your queso.
All right, there you go. Colbert with some jokes, and now it's time to get to my guest. All right, well, you've seen the pictures of Emily Feiner being carried out by New York State troopers of a town hall for Congressman Mike Lawler, and that's right here in my district. I was at the town hall myself just a week ago. He did one in my county, and then it's the district crosses the Hudson River into Westchester County, and this is where Emily was the other night. So I figured I'd reach out to her. We have a lot of similar friends and mutual friends, and she lives right nearby, but I just didn't know her that well. I knew of her. We'd been in similar circles for a while, but I thought she would be a great person to talk to, an elder, someone who's been an activist for a long time. She was the chief of social work at the VA in New Jersey. So she's worked with veterans a lot and trauma victims and veterans of the Iraq and Afghan generation. Particularly, she's worked with adolescents, young adults in outpatient clinics. She'd worked with homeless pregnant women in a maternity shelter. She was the director of an outpatient substance abuse counseling center. She was an adjunct professor at Fordham Graduate School of Social Services. She's been on the boards of many organizations, including HeadStart of our county and Planned Parenthood. of our county. She was twice elected to our local village board of trustees. She's a real smart, real important figure in our area. And her dad was Irv Feiner, who you should definitely look up. Her mom was an activist as well. We talked a little bit about both of them, her family, her life, and why she does what she does. I think you're really going to like my conversation with Emily Feiner, who is on social media. She's on Blue Sky and Facebook and Threads. And I was very happy to have her join me. You can watch this interview on YouTube, youtube.com/standupwithpete. Go subscribe there and watch it if you want. Here we go right now with the very, very awesome Emily Feiner. There she is. You've seen the picture. You've heard all about her, and she lives right here in my community and has been an activist her whole life, as were her parents. Emily, thank you so much for talking to me today. There's a lot of questions I've got for you, but mostly I just want to tell you how amazing I think it is what you've done, not only in that moment, but your entire life with your work as a social worker and a therapist, but obviously with your activism. It's really inspiring, and it looks like you're not going anywhere anytime soon. So I just want to start with a moment of gratefulness for all that you are.
Oh, thank you, Pete. That's really nice to hear, especially today.
Why today? How are you feeling?
First of all, I'm okay physically, totally. This is very exhausting, though, I have to tell you. When you go viral overnight, people decide who you are and what you are. So I'm absorbing that as people project onto me who they are and what they think I represent. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak for myself.
Who you are is the daughter of two activists. Your father got accidentally famous because he was protesting while a student at Syracuse University, and then was arrested and became the subject of a Supreme Court case, a famous one about speech. Your dad was Irv Feiner. He was a World War II veteran and an activist. Why, first of all, did your dad stand up for, I think in this case, it was black folks in Syracuse, where, by the way, I grew up. Why did your dad care so much about marginalized communities in, I think that was 1949, 10 years before you were born, right? When he was arrested as a student?
Yes. So my dad grew up poor in Harlem and then later the Bronx, a Jewish kid. He knew what oppression was. He knew what bigotry was. He knew what poverty was. And he lied about his age to join the army to go kill Nazis. And when he got to Europe, he saw a lot of terrible things. He went through the camps after they were liberated. He was not the first wave, but he did see the aftermath of that. He got spit on by German prisoners of war because he was Jewish. And when he left, my grandmother gave him a chai to wear around his neck. And when the German POWs saw it, they spit on him. And so he went and he saved the world from fascism and came back to America and demobbed down in the South. And they put him on a train up to the North. And it was really hot. And he saw a velvet curtain around several seats on the train. And he wondered what was back behind that. And he pulled back the curtain and saw a Black family sweating to death in this train, who were segregated from the rest of the train based on their color. And he said, I didn't go to defeat fascism halfway around the world to come back and see it here. And he decided to throw down for civil rights.
Particularly Black folks in America.
Absolutely. He was a member of the Henry Wallace Young Progressive Party. And so they were also involved with actions for workers' rights, for women's rights. But yeah, Black civil rights was a big deal for my dad.
Where has your dad, Irv Feiner, has his story been told accurately, in your opinion, somewhere that people could read more about, learn more about him? Because I learned about him in just a little bit of research before talking to you, but I wasn't sure if there was an official history of his work, his activism, his life.
It's being written now by Roy Gutterman, who is I believe he's the director of the Tully Center for Free Speech up at Syracuse University. But there's been other stuff written about him but it's piecemeal.
Yeah.
But nothing that I could point you to.
I could talk a lot about what happened at the Supreme Court and what his life meant to you. And maybe we can continue this conversation because your dad's life was so fascinating. But I want to ask you about your mom and then ask you, obviously, about your work. So tell me a little bit about mom, because maybe she was a little overshadowed by your dad's Supreme Court case, but apparently she was also an activist. Both of your parents were. And you told me that growing up, you didn't have a traditional weekend.
No. While other kids went and saw baseball games or went flying kites with their families, I went to marches to end the Vietnam War, marches in support of civil rights, that May Day parades, Labor Day parades, working for workers' rights. Mom grew up in a family where she was the daughter of two activists. Her mother was blacklisted. She was a opera singer, and she was blacklisted because of her political beliefs. She was very active in supporting the Lincoln Brigade, the group of American soldiers who went to fight to try to keep the fascists out of Spain. So she lost her job. Mom grew up in that family, seeing her mother punished for her political beliefs. And Mom was elected president of the student body at Queens College as an open communist. She was a member of the CPUSA in the 40s and the 50s. She was marching in front of the White House to try to stop the execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. When that happened, she was on the Mall and heard Martin Luther King deliver his I Have a Dream speech, as was, by the way, my husband's mother. So my children have two grandmothers who were on the Mall to hear Martin Luther King deliver his iconic speech.
Wild.
My mother organized the buses. His mother got on the bus. But they didn't know each other until we started seeing each other.
I think people that listen to your story, as I am right now, make assumptions and jump to conclusions as to why you are who you are, why you do what you do, why you believe and think what you think. And I wonder how you feel about people putting their assumptions on you about what you probably think, because I think people might be surprised, for example, about your career and how you've spent your life and how you've dedicated so much of your time to helping organizations and groups like veterans. You worked at the New Jersey Veterans Administration, helping treat veterans who came back from Iraq and Afghanistan with all types of trauma. You have done a lot of work with trauma victims throughout your career. How do you describe why you believe what you believe and connect it to the work that you've done to combat assumptions that people might make, having heard some of your story or even some of your opinions, or even just watching you get carried out? This woman, this age, gets carried out. I got one piece of information about her, and now I've decided who she is.
Wow. You know the saying, I contain multitudes.
Yeah, you do. You do.
Yeah, and we all do. One thing is for sure, and that is that my political beliefs are not, they don't come into the consultation room with me, right? So I've treated all kinds of people, and I believe in the basic humanity of people. And I believe all people deserve to be treated with respect and with dignity. And all people have their own struggle. We don't know what it is. So we've got to listen, and we have to learn. I was honored to work with our veterans. It was some of the most meaningful work I've ever done, and I'm really passionate about it. And I volunteer now and help veterans all the time get access to services. I help their family members get access to services. These are people who, in the case of Iraq and Afghanistan, volunteered. It was an all-volunteer army, right, and they put everything on the line. And I feel really strongly that we owe them for that.
Yes.
And today's military, who volunteers? It's often people who have no other path to higher education. It's often people who need to escape really bad home lives. It's people who come from families with military histories, and they're really proud of that, and they want to carry it on. And it's people who were moved by 9/11. And I respect all of that.
Afford college tuition, and the military helps them pay for it. That's a huge percentage, I've heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a big part of what I did was help people negotiate the GI Bill, quite frankly. When I did case management kind of work, people would get frustrated, and I can help work those systems. And I do that.
real quickly, what have you heard or what are your thoughts on specifically cuts to the VA that you've heard and veterans losing their jobs through Elon Musk's run Doge in these first 100 days? Do you have any stories, anecdotes, thoughts, friends, colleagues, opinions on the VA situation?
It's so many. I don't even know where to start. When I speak with my friends who are still at VA, what they tell me is it's never been worse than this. And they are so frustrated because this is a group of tremendously talented and committed people, and they want to help veterans. Over 50% of the employees at VA are veterans themselves. So, one instance is the fact that VA, we never had enough therapists to provide the care that the veterans needed. And so they ramped up hiring. They hired a bunch of people. And with the advent of telehealth, that made it so that they could hire therapists who could provide therapy via telehealth from their homes, and we could ramp up to meet the needs of the veteran population. And Doge had this crazy idea to demand that they all come into a VA medical center. So they took 10 therapists and put them in one room and told them to do telehealth. There's no confidentiality.
Oh, God.
I can't do therapy when I hear the person over the barrier doing therapy with somebody else.
Horrible. That's
crazy.
Horrible.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that's a nightmare anecdote, but still an important one. And these details don't get reported, so many of them, because there's so many details. Going back to the larger issue, there you were at Mike Lawler's town hall the other night. I was there the week before in a similar situation. And I wonder how you see how we got here. And I could go to talk about New York State and the county that you grew up in, that I've lived in for 20 years, but that's not as interesting as what I want your opinion on the national picture of how we've got here, given the fact that your entire life have been influenced by what's happening in culture and politics and government. You could never feign ignorance or apathy because of how you grew up. You've seen it all, is my question. What do you think about the moment that we're in and that you're the one that we've been waiting for?
Oh boy, I hope I'm not the one we've been waiting for. Really, that's a heavy burden. I think that we lost the thread. I think this country has never been perfect. Our original sin was slavery. Our original sin was genocide against the indigenous people who were here.
Start there, yeah.
I think we were on a path where we were constantly moving forward, constantly trying to get better, constantly trying to live up to the promise of our Constitution and that wonderful Bill of Rights that came after it. And we lost the thread somewhere after World War II, maybe. In my lifetime, I really think about the damage that the Reagan administration did and how it set us back, how a man could go to Philadelphia, Mississippi, and talk about states' rights and be elected. That said a lot.
When people say Reagan, I always jump to, in his case, the narrative that he was able to create, which was similar to, I guess, Margaret Thatcher's and others, where government was the problem, not
government is the enemy.
Government is the enemy. And I feel like that, combined with a lack of accountability for everything from the Vietnam War to Nixon to my lifetime, the financial crisis, the Iraq War before it, climate, like no accountability. Government is the enemy. And then I feel like the final third part of the catalyst telling that got us here is right-wing media. The fact that media became unregulated. You could say whatever you wanted to say on AM radio, then on Fox News, now on the internet and podcasts. So now you can.
And the scapegoating.
Go ahead. What do you mean by that?
Scapegoating of immigrants, scapegoating of people who are unable to support themselves for whatever reason, by dint of disability or economic
bootstraps.
Bootstraps. That's a good way to put it.
Their own poverty, and if only they worked harder. And then, of course, the financial crisis, they blame poor black people for buying homes they couldn't afford. The immigrants are the problem, and that's what you mean by scapegoating. And certainly media did that, and politicians did that. That's how I feel like we got to 2016 to a reality show star becoming who wears
and no real meaningful opposition to that. I think that's part of it, too, is that there was no meaningful opposition to that. And I think that caused a reckoning.
Of Trump's candidacy, no meaningful opposition to the larger narrative that we just talked about.
I think both.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think both.
Yeah. Trump got elected the first time. There was a resistance immediately. I was in the streets in Washington at the Women's March covering it.
So was I.
And you were in D.C.?
I was.
And it was locked. There was no march because there were too many people. There were so many people, and there were marches all over the country.
And I've been to many marches in Washington. That was amazing.
Yep. I'd love to just go through the protests that you've attended and what you've seen and what you witnessed. But I think the question is, what do you make of Trump 2 and the movement for resistance now that you have been at the tip of the spear of? Obviously, you've been involved. You've been protesting, I think, at the Tesla dealerships as well, right, Emily?
Yes, full disclosure, I own and drive a Tesla that I bought in 2019 before I knew what he was. But yeah, so I go to my Tesla takedowns in my Tesla.
My threshold by the way, on that is there's no forgiveness for anybody who owns a Tesla truck. But
those things are ugly.
My threshold is, did you buy your Tesla before or after Sig Heil?
And before Sig Heil. So I'm in the clear.
If you saw Elon Sig Heil, then bought your Tesla, there's no forgiveness. But pre-Sig Heil, I forgive.
Thank you.
So talk to me about your activism and Trump 1 versus Trump 2 and what you're seeing, what you think is working, not working, is needed, et cetera.
I think two things. One is, I think people were shocked. I think it was like total shock and awe. Like, we all read Project 2025, but everybody went, nah, they're not going to do that. That's just so crazy. And then boom, like right out of the gate, they just threw it all up against the wall to see what would stick. And you don't know where to turn. You're like, oh, and then they're arresting judges, right? They're sending U.S. citizens to El Salvador with no due process. I think people are scared. And I think that's what they want. I think they want us all to be silent and to sit down and shut up and be scared of them. I think that's why Mike Lawler has 4 different levels of security at his town hall in Somers, New York, which probably has a crime rate of minus 0.00003. And, it is, people are overwhelmed and they're scared and they don't know what to do. And so you have the leadership of the opposition party saying, sit on your hands and wait until it comes down to 40%, and then we'll be able to push back. And of course, that was like not reading the room. And everybody started to push back against that. And I think slowly you saw citizens organizing to do whatever it is that they could do. We had to become our own leaders. I had to refuse to leave that town hall when I was unfairly asked to do so, because I knew that's what was right. And I think people, if we look inside, will know what's right.
This is the least important terrible thing about Mike Lawler, but I can't think of another time where I saw somebody go on stage and give speeches in front of a picture of themselves.
He thinks a lot of himself.
Least important thing, but it says a little bit about what he thinks of himself. So at that town hall, there were hundreds of people. The one I was at in Rockland, there were over 600 people at. Were you at that one as well?
I was not. I was in North Carolina. So that's why I was in Somers.
Fair enough. So I wonder what you think it achieves if we're all in there making noise and not letting him blah, 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 because he talks a lot and doesn't say anything. And I think that frustrates people. Politicians sometimes do that. Sometimes they don't. And they shouldn't at town halls because people don't have patience for it. It's not like a cable news hit. So what do you think, like, the disruption at these town halls achieves?
I think it communicates the very real anger of the electorate. And I think it communicates the amount of fear we have over what's about to come. If you're like me and you're collecting your Social Security, I need that check. And I still work a little. People need to know that the institutions are going to be there for them.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like when you say I need that check, it's your money. You already earned it. Like
that's right.
They're just holding on to it for us. Yeah, that's a great idea. It's been a wildly successful program. So yeah, that's the fear in your case, and everybody has so many others that they're concerned about. What is the importance of organizing? Like, you've been in the protest movement your whole life. Talk to me about why you do it, what you get out of it, and what it means to organize, how you know who to trust and where to go and who to listen to and what to do. Any answer to any of that?
I just think it's really important to be a part of a collective. I don't think anything gets done alone in a silo. So organizing for me is about being effective. It's also about learning from other people. And it's about helping other people learn from me about whatever it is I can offer. And I truly believe that until all are free, none are free. So I'm going to join with my immigrant brothers and sisters and my black and brown and yellow brothers and sisters and red. And I am going to join with anybody who's willing to work to make this country and, quite frankly, this world a more peaceful place, a more equitable place, a place that we can continue to live on this planet without destroying it. I care about those things, and I can't do that alone. So yeah, I have to organize, and I have to explain to other people why this is important and how they can make a difference. In a million years, I would never have guessed that what happened to me on Sunday night would have happened, and that I would have gotten a chance to be on your podcast or talk to any of the other people I've talked to in the last 24 hours. And you got to seize those moments. I'm just like this normal person who just wasn't going to get up out of her seat because of some arbitrary order by some guy who doesn't want to answer my questions, who's supposed to represent me in Washington. And we can all be that person.
I don't know. I don't know if you're a normal person, but I appreciate that you're trying to appear as such. You've been in the fight your whole life, like I said, and so you've been paying attention. You've been trying to make a difference. It just so happens in that moment, the way it went down, the way they carried you out, the way you held up. What was the peace sign about? Like, how did you have the wherewithal you just went limp and held up peace signs and that was it?
Yeah, I've been asked, did I have civil disobedience training? And the honest answer is not that I recall. Maybe I did. Like when I was protesting American involvement in Nicaragua in the 80s, maybe I did. I don't remember it, but maybe. And I just knew that you're supposed to go limp when they pick you up. And I've been, like I said, the earliest demonstrations I were on were probably anti-war demonstrations. Ever since October 7th, I have been calling out and crying out for peace. I believe in peace. I don't think that we can continue to have endless wars, and the opportunity costs of the amount of carnage that's caused in our world every year. I don't believe that the person who could figure out how to cure cancer hasn't been born. I'm sure they have, but they might have starved to death in sub-Saharan Africa or been bombed to death in Yemen. I don't know, but we can't afford to keep killing each other. So I threw up peace signs.
I love everything you said. I think the person that was born to cure cancer was actually about to cure it, and then Elon Musk cut his research.
Yep.
I kid, and I don't mean to, because that was a really important, I think, explanation of why you did what you did. What have you heard, Emily, since this? I know you've been inundated with calls and messages on every single platform that you're on. People you know, people you don't know, because I'm guessing in terms of the positive feedback, I'm sure you've had all kinds of insults and attacks. Hopefully it hasn't been too bad. But in terms of the positive feedback, it's a very inspirational thing that you did. Again, you're not one of these people that is seeking attention and trying to build some social media following that you can monetize and a podcast and all the things that a lot of activists do. And I'm not even going to judge it because, hey, good for you. But that's what's happened. That picture, your civil disobedience creates an image, which creates an inspiration, which sparks movement, which sparks the momentum of a movement, which inspires other people your age and certainly I would imagine younger and men. If this older woman is doing this, what am I doing? And with all due respect on your age, but I do think your age matters in this case. And then when people get to learn about you and who you are, I think that matters more. But what have you been hearing, and what do you think that if it's any way possible that you could take yourself out of that, think that picture and that action represents? If somebody else did it, what would you be thinking?
I have been totally bowled over by the messages I've gotten of support. They have been really soothing for me. They've helped me continue on through this day. They have been tremendously kind and generous. People thanking me for my courage. People thanking me for speaking up. People saying, I've always wondered what I would do. I don't know how you did it. Can you tell me? Thank you for speaking up for me. It's been wonderful. I think probably the most negative stuff I've heard has been from my congressperson, who has now gone on a publicity tour to paint me as some crazy, literally crazy person who needs help. And so...
Has he named you?
I saw his clip from Hannity last night. People sent it to me. My husband said, why are you watching that? And I think he just said that woman or this woman. I don't think he names me. It's very clear he's talking about me. He talks about some old social media posts, at least one of which he took out of context. Again, he doesn't know who I am. I'm like everybody else. You got to talk to me for a while to figure out who I am.
And that's why I did that. It's exactly why I did it. And as we learned, you contain multitudes. And I think that's such an important lesson before we make these knee-jerk reactions about people based on their past posts or this or that piece of information. There's a lot of good candidates running. Have you been working on any specific campaign or even supported the candidate against Michael Lawler?
I have not. You're
now going to be asked for your endorsement, I bet.
I was a very active Democrat for over 40 years. I held elected office as a Democrat. I was a Democratic committee woman for over 40 years, and I was chair of our local party for a while. And I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm registered no party, so I don't have a vote in the Democratic primary. And I will wait to see what happens and then make a choice. For me, I care about a lot of different issues. And I want to make sure that the person that I vote for most closely aligns with those. I don't expect 100% alignment. I know I'll never get that, but I want to see where the nominee comes out on the things that matter to me.
Finally, what would you say about the importance of doing local activism, your school board, your town, etc.?
So important. Donald Trump is an anomaly. Most times people come to higher office through lower offices. So right now, my county legislator, Beth Davidson, was on the school board before she was a county legislator. She's now running for Congress. Maybe she'll be my congresswoman. I don't know. That is the step ladder. That's how it works. And so we need to pay attention at all levels, not to mention that probably our largest tax bill comes from our school district. Don't you want to know who's spending those dollars and making those choices? I do. I think we develop leaders on the local level, and they are closest to the people. They're the ones who have their fingers on the pulse. When I was a village trustee in Nyack, I knew everybody's story in this village. And I walked this village year after year, knocking on doors, talking to voters. People who run for Senate don't get a chance to do that. Certainly when they run for president, they don't get to do that. So when you become active and you let people know you're watching, they listen to you and they want to know what you think.
I guess I have one more question, which is if you have any kind of driving philosophy in your life. I think you said you're not religious, but you're Jewish ethnically, and you're a scholar, you're a learned, educated woman, not only in the formal way, but through life. You're a therapist. You understand specifically trauma, both personally and professionally. You told me you lost your 10-year-old, did you say brother or sister?
My sister was 13 when she died. I was 10.
You were 10 and your sister was 13. You have multitudes. What, if any, is there any kind of driving philosophy or quote or theory or practice that you wake up in the morning and live by or think about that motivates you or inspires you?
Sure. Do good, be good. And every day, especially since Trump was reelected, I wake up and say, I'm just going to do one thing today to be part of the resistance, to push back, to defy. So if maybe that's going to a Tesla takedown, I have this body, I can go and be a person and they can count me. And so I try to show up wherever I can show up. I'm usually out twice a week or so. I don't have to go to work every day. So this is what I do. I make phone calls. I go to meetings and learn about stuff. So that's important to me. But it's also important to me to have some fun. And so one of my favorite quotes is the Emma Goldman quote, if I can't dance, I don't want to be in your revolution. I love to dance. And I think having fun while you're trying to change the world is a really important piece.
I love it. I love you. I love talking to you. It's really inspiring. And I'm so grateful for your time today and for your leadership and just for being the change that you want to see. It's really exactly what we need right now. And you're out there doing the work. So thank you very much for talking to me, Emily. And if anybody wants to contact you or reach out to you, is social media? You're on Blue Sky, right?
I am on Blue Sky. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I don't hide my name. Never have. I'm proud of who I am. Sure, reach out. Pete, you have my contact information. Everybody gets their 15 minutes. If this is my 15 minutes, I want to use it.
You are. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you, Pete.
Well, there you go, Emily Feiner. I hope you liked that conversation, and I hope that you will follow her and support her and her activism. You can learn more about her in the links in the show notes as every day. And thank you very much for tuning in today. I really appreciate it as always. Can't do it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Right now, John Carroll. Go support him as well. Buy his new album, johncarroll.org. He writes and performs all the music for this year's show, and we love him. Hope to see you tomorrow night's Hangout anytime on Discord. Be the change you want to see in the world. I love you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you gotta stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up, you got to stand up, you got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence, and even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up, stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see them flee the scene of that experiment. If you stand up, alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand